This video is brought to you by HelloFresh. No, I don't have time to grocery shop. Think of all the things I need to unpack that'll sit on a shelf and collect dust for an eternity. HelloFresh is perfect for this sort of scenario. Save money by ditching a typical grocery store visit or paying too much for that Chinese takeout you're not even sure you actually enjoy. Instead, take your pick from 40 weekly recipes from fit and wholesome to pescatarian, maybe something vegetarian, or be like me and just stuff a whole bunch of meat in your mouth. Ho-ho! They're more than just dinners too. You can also choose from over 100 items to round out your order, like snacks and easy to prepare lunches, so you can easily take some goodies with you on the go. Everything's delivered directly to your doorstep in a single box, packaged and portioned just right so that nothing goes to waste. Even if you don't consider yourself a good cook, HelloFresh orders come complete with extremely easy to follow instructions. As someone who's been using them for some time now, trust me when I say you'll be making some great tasting meals in no time at all. And that's perfect for someone like me who works from home. Sometimes I get too caught up in video editing and I simply don't have the time to go out and get what I need to make dinner. With HelloFresh, all that comes to me, and you can't beat that convenience. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code SCMJ16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com, code SCMJ16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Thank you as always for helping support this channel, and I hope you enjoy whatever it is you decide to cook. Now let's continue on with the show. Alright, okay, we're slowly getting there. I still got a couple of things to spruce up. I got some dangled wires on the floor. That's a tripping hazard. The office is slowly but surely turning into a nice cozy place that we could just sit down and talk video games. Just in time too, because we got a new marathon to start. And yeah, it might be confusing to some, like the new Zelda game is out and my ass is here talking Devil May Cry? Of course, look, unless it's Sonic or another franchise that I'm head over heels over, it's generally not worth it for me to chase trends and stress myself out trying to get a video out in time to satiate the almighty algorithm. And don't get me wrong, that's exactly why my subscriber growth is so fucking slow. But at the same time, man, if I don't keep my mental health in check, when I can anyway, I would have stopped doing this a long fucking time ago. But as I was saying, Devil May Cry. Been thinking about diving into this one for a while now. Also, it's another Capcom property. Had a few of you mention that to me in social media. It's like, dude, you did Mega Man 0, then ZX, then the Legends games needed an RE4 remake video. Now you're doing Devil May Cry? What's with all the Capcom love as of late? And nothing. It's just unintentional. You think I planned this shit in advance? And I'm excited for this because I'm heading into most of these games for the first time. And the varying opinions I've heard on just about all of these entries has left me very intrigued on what I'll ultimately think about them. To say time and time again, chronicling that journey from beginning to end, seeing how the series progresses or regresses, that's all part of the fun for me. Now, Devil May Cry was something I've been aware of since the first game, way back in its original release of 2001. Everyone in my neighborhood and school had a PlayStation 2 when it was all the rage, and while I was surrounded by an uncomfortably large amount of old heads that want to talk nothing but sports ball games, got your Maddens or NBA Lives or 2Ks, eventually I was made aware of this game called Devil May Cry. But since I was distracted with a lot of other games around the time because I was only 14 with an income that was basically non-existent, I wouldn't play any game in the franchise until the mid-2000s when I was in college. And it wasn't even the first game, it was the third game, Dante's Awakening. Just something about this cover that looked badass to me. But okay, I play it for a bit, but then I ended up dropping it because it wasn't holding my attention for very long, and I was already juggling that between Resident Evil 4, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, a lot of games on the Nintendo DS because that was new around the time. It was hard to invest time in a lot of shit because I had to work on college projects and I was also trying to find a job. Then a couple of years later, I discovered Bayonetta. Loved every bit of it, still recommend it to this day. What a great time. I would learn that the creator of this game was Hideki Kamiya, and when I found out that he was responsible for kickstarting Devil May Cry, I went all the way back to the first game and attempted to finally play it for myself. You know, Resident Evil 4 was my gateway to the rest of the series. Maybe Bayonetta, despite being completely unrelated, would do the same. I didn't play it for more than an hour. We'll get into it soon, but the point is, Devil May Cry, for some reason or another, just didn't click with me. And I'm hoping this series of videos can finally make me see, what I've been missing. But yeah, Hideki Kamiya is back on this channel, still haven't been blocked on Twitter yet, and I'm hoping I can continue this streak for another couple of years. So he and Shinji Mikami made Resident Evil 2. It was a juggernaut in sales and reception, so it was only natural that Shinji Mikami requested that Hideki Kamiya make another game in the series, and that was the plan at first. Initially starring a dude named Tony Redgrave that can pull off supernatural feats because of biotechnology, Shinji Mikami felt that the scenario for what was originally meant to be Resident Evil 4 was too radically different from what was created earlier, which is funny to say in hindsight considering the kind of game Resident Evil 4 would end up becoming. But instead of completely scrapping it, which after the shit that happened with Resident Evil 2's development, I don't think anyone would even humor the idea, Shinji Mikami requested that the game be made a separate entity altogether. After reworking the scenario a bit, basing it more on the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, members of Capcom Production Studio 4, calling themselves Team Little Devils, turned what was originally meant to be Resident Evil 4 into Devil May Cry, releasing for the PlayStation 2 in mid-2001. And despite the game seeing more than a handful of re-releases over the past few years with your added widescreen, increased visual clarity, all that jazz that usually accompanies an HD re-release, I'm going to be sticking with the original PlayStation 2 release for this video. Although, man, I'll say now, play the HD version if you're thinking about playing this, because in the PS2 release in North America, the jump button is triangle, what the fuck. But okay then, are we good to go for the Devil May Cry marathon? Let's rock, baby. No, seriously, that's one of the first lines you hear when you boot the game up.
Let's rock, baby.
Did they not have another take that they could use? That baby at the end sounded so weird, like the voice actor had his thumb over that part of the line, realized it last second, and scrambled to get it out before they stopped recording. Oh lord, the voice acting in general is not good. And it's in part because of the wooden delivery of basically everybody, but I also found the script pretty stilted too.
Trish, devils never cry. These tears are a gift only humans have.
A first draft of a soap opera that didn't have enough time for a revision, and yet there's still value in it being so bad. You can't go further than 1 minute when talking about the first Devil May Cry without someone in the room mentioning,
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
But I like to think it's because despite that awful delivery of that line, the voice acting still provides entertainment, and sometimes that's all it needs to do. That's what I love about the voice acting in the first Resident Evil. It ain't good, but it's still fun.
Chris? Stop it.
But okay, let's cover the plot really quick, and unlike the laughably unreadable opening crawl, you should be able to understand what's coming out of my mouth. A long time ago, there was a war between the human world and the underworld. However, a demon from the underworld named Sparta, to quote the game directly here, woke up to justice one day and decided to defend the human world from the tyranny of the underworld, and for years he would maintain peace and harmony of the human world, eventually siring children before passing away. Those children would be Dante and Virgil. 20 years ago, before the start of the game, demonic forces would attack and kill Dante's family, and swearing vengeance, he would do everything in his power to hunt down those responsible, eventually opening an establishment dedicated to wiping out demon scum called Devil May Cry, a name I really like even if it does come across as a warning you find on a package label. One night, a mysterious woman named Trish crashes into Dante's place of business to ask for his assistance, knowing full well that he not only lost his family years ago, but that he is also the son of the legendary Sparta. The emperor of the underworld, called Mundus, attempted to take over the human world over 20 years ago, but thanks to Sparta, his powers were sealed away and humanity was saved. But good things never last, and Mundus is attempting to be a shit once again, so Trish requests that Dante help her infiltrate the source of the problem in this castle located on Malay Island and stop Mundus once and for all. Dante agrees not only because he's sure Mundus was the one responsible for his family's death, but because Trish also bears a striking resemblance to his deceased mother. So the two make their way to Malay Island, where Trish then immediately leaves Dante to do all the work himself, and that's that. That's the rest of the game. Dante exploring the castle on Malay Island, slashing and dicing all the underworld goons that gets in his way. We're talking evil puppets, one even holding a shotgun. Ow. Giant insects you fight in the castle sewers. This was definitely a Resident Evil 4 prototype at some point. Shadowcasts that like to do somersaults and cheap shot you in their opening cutscene. The game does that a couple of times when you're introduced to a new enemy, and I respect wanting to keep players on their toes, but some just scream unfair. Like right there, what the fuck is my first time, dickheads? And I ain't playing on higher difficulties either, what the shit? You'll be up to your neck in boss encounters too. While there's only a handful of them, you fight them all about 3 times a piece, getting more challenging each time. You got this Phantom dude, a giant lava spider scorpion that shoots meteors at you, Griffin, a bird that shoots laser beams that has a bunch of bird heads for a mouth. I love that design. Finally, you got this guy, Nello Angelo, a dark reflection of Dante that is just as dangerous as he is in close combat. But all I kept saying to myself was, Marcellus, is that you? The first sword you pick up is a lightning blade, and later there's a fire-based weapon too. Red orbs dropping from enemies. Onimusha, is that you?
Stop it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if that were intentional. They're both Capcom for one thing, and apparently DMC's juggling mechanic where you keep enemies in the air for bigger combos was inspired by a glitch developers could do in an earlier build of Onimusha before it was removed. That's pretty neat. Play Onimusha. But once you enter the island, nothing else really happens in the story until the end game. You can check environments and find things to interact with here and there to get Dante's thoughts on a few things, just like you would do in any other Resident Evil, but you'll quickly find Dante isn't very interested in the details. He's got a mission and he's going to keep going until it's done. Whatever gets in his way, he will cut down and then just move on. It's a very no-nonsense adventure, but it's a little lacking on nuance. Still, we get some nuggets of intrigue here and there. Like, it's not outright stated, but might as well have been with how blatant it is, that Nello Angelo is a corrupted Virgil, Dante's brother long thought dead. I think Dante puts two and two together himself upon reflecting for a moment, but nothing else comes from that, even after the final encounter. It just comes across as a tidbit, and I find it weird how it's just glossed over. The same goes for Trish, who we'll find out later is a demon created by Mundus to lure Dante into his castle, basing her looks off of Dante's mom to make him more willing to help, but after the opening, she rarely pops in through the adventure. Shit, by the end of it, she ends up switching to the good side when Dante saves her lives one time from certain doom. That was easy. So there was little dimension I found in the plot, although I also never read the Divine Comedy, the work this game was inspired from, so maybe if I read that I will understand a few more things. Otherwise, no, this plot's pretty simple. A classic good versus evil that ends with Dante facing off against Mundus in a Space Harrier reference. What the fuck, they did that here too? And then it did the same shit. I guess Hideki Kamiya really liked Space Harrier growing up? Oh yeah, that's exactly it. Okay then. The thin story, it's really not all that bad though, because for one, the game isn't terribly long. I ended up clocking in over 6 hours after the final boss. The game breezes by. The constant kinetic action also kept me stimulated enough to not realize, I really am just exploring the castle and watching things happen with no rhyme or reason to it. Nevertheless, this story has great visual moments to it. I love the bit where Dante finds his new weapon, it lunges at him, pins him to the ground. Credit should have been rolling right there. I would have laughed my ass off, but being the demon he is, he slowly cranks back up, he takes it out of his chest, and he's ready to get back into action. That's a great set piece. How the demon bird you fight a few times tries to escape at the end, but a chunk of the arena tells him to eat shit in the most Looney Tunes way imaginable. Everything about the opening bit with Dante and Trish crashing into Dante's office with her motorcycle and zaps him with lightning energy, and then realizing, oh shit, I need to do more, and she fucking chucks the motorcycle at him, which Dante then parries with a shower of bullets. Devil May Cry, despite its dark gothic aesthetic with demons lurking around every corner, some packing names like Nobody, okay, I'll take your word for that, and Fetish. The whole thing still comes off as silly, and it works well enough. It didn't leave me bored or confused, and that's very important to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other antics Dante and Trish get themselves into, since by the end of the game, they team up and become Devil Never Cry. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well, I think. We'll see if that sticks. But okay, as a game, this is where I was the most curious because, alright, I love me some good action games. I was finally playing the game that basically paved the way for the action-adventure hack and slash for the foreseeable future. But it was also the first game in a series, made in an era where the hack and slash genre didn't really have any codified mechanics. It was also, to mention again for the 50th time, supposed to be a Resident Evil game. Would the end result still resemble something being a solid enough game to recommend even today? Not really, but I wouldn't call the game bad, it's just antiquated. Let's start with the good things. The game looks great for an early PlayStation 2 title. When I look past the fact that Dante is wearing a turtleneck under that spiffy coat, I think character models look just fine. A little dead in the eyes at points, but more than passable. The gothic architecture of the castle is large and imposing in the right areas, every room crammed with debris and other rubbish. The motion blur can be a little much though. I think it was used to cover up the rough edges around the graphics. And maybe it doesn't look as bad on a CRT, but like on a high definition screen, it's kind of hard to make out things sometimes. The HD re-release did away with the blur altogether, so keep that in mind when you're considering which version to play. Fighting against demons comes with some great music too, courtesy of Masami Ueda coming back from the Resident Evil series, of course. My favorites ended up being Public Enemy, Psycho Siren, and Ultraviolet. Great tracks, kept me pumped through every battle. So Dante is a demon-slaying, badass, coat-wearing, desperately in need of a hobby when he's waiting for a phone call son of a bitch. He can cut down anything in his path with his modest assortment of weapons, a couple of broadswords here and there, one containing lightning powers, the other being a sword passed down from his dad that does some serious damage when you know how to use it. Then you get these fire gauntlets that let you punch and kick the shit out of enemies with some mixed martial arts and fireballs. When you're able to lay on the damage consistently and fast enough, your rank increases, capping out on stylish. Enemies defeated while on a higher rank reward you with more red orbs, which you use in this shop to buy extra techniques or other things to upgrade your health and all that. You're also ranked at the end of every mission too, giving you even more red orbs to spend when you rank high enough, but don't expect this to go past rank C a bunch on your first time. I only managed a few Bs and I think one S rank throughout the whole game, so it wasn't my main source of income, I can say that now. Exploration is what got me most of my currency and letting me get all those extra skills. Complementing sword player Dante's firearms, all coming with infinite ammo too, so shoot the ever-living fuck out of everything if you really want to. Just a heads up though, spamming guns won't get you a good combo rank unless you're juggling enemies in the air mid-combo. But if you don't care about that and would rather keep a safe distance, fire away. Again, you have infinite ammo. Your default weapons are ebony and ivory, your standard handguns. And while I was sure these will end up getting replaced later in the game because it's rare that a default weapon still has utility up until the end of the game from my experience, surprisingly I still found myself going back to these to deal with certain demons. The rapid fire was good for staggering a couple of these guys, and you can also use that to keep enemies in the air and keep your combo going. And you know what? I really like Dante's little leg strafing he does when he's got these babies out and he's locked onto something. It's a nice weighted animation. I like seeing it in action. Later you get a shotgun and oof, I love this one. It was like I was back in Resident Evil 2 with the custom shotgun. Just the sound of the impact alone was enough to make me moist. Moist. There's also a grenade launcher, couldn't possibly tell you why that's there, and I ended up using this the most because not only was it insane in close quarters, capable of staggering a bunch of enemies at once, but I found that it was also very good in building up your devil trigger gauge. Once you fill this up enough, and that's remarkably easy to do so don't sleep on it, you can execute your devil trigger technique, transforming Dante into his demon form, regenerating health over time, and your strength and agility getting a serious boost. With proper upgrades, you can even take to the sky and zap things with your lightning fingers. This skill saved my ass a handful of times. A lot of enemies tended to stick to the ground, I noticed, so having an airborne advantage made things much easier. Devil Trigger in general ended up being my main method of damage, but you can still kill plenty of things with your weapons as is. Apart from your guns, you can even upgrade your weapons to unlock more maneuvers like a boomerang toss or a sliding dash that you can also use on a ledge to have Dante do a Mario long jump. But nothing compares to the raw damage you end up doing with Devil Trigger. It's a crutch, but I didn't really care. If you're not proficient in the game's combo system, and I don't think I ever really was, enemies will fuck you up in little to no time. Not only do some swarm you, but some have attacks that do an absurd amount of damage at once. Even on normal difficulty, this game is pretty tough because of this, and I found myself dying a couple of times. If you don't have a healing item on standby, the only other way you're restoring health is getting a health orb from a fallen enemy if they even happen to drop one, or using Devil Trigger to restore it when it's active. So my advice for your first time, spend those red orbs you find in the castle on enemies to buy these purple orbs. These permanently increase your Devil Trigger gauge, letting you stay in the form for longer durations. Combined with the grenade launcher for easy gauge building, and there you go, you can get through the rest of the game relatively comfortably. Although some things will still shit on you regardless, either because of their damage output or age structural design of the game. The worst of that being the fixed camera and claustrophobic level design. Like, it's bad enough the control gets weird whenever the camera switches angles. Since you have full analog control in this game, you may find yourself suddenly snapping to another direction when exploring or trying to fend off demons. It happened just enough to be annoying. The fixed camera also tends to obscure enemies and their attacks. Now, against regular enemies this isn't so bad unless it's these ghosts and wraiths that you fight in narrow corridors, and guess what? They can go through walls, and you can't. Neener neener. But the camera can also be a nightmare against boss fights, except for, ironically enough, the one actually called Nightmare. The only thing I hated about this guy was getting caught in this attack, which sends you to another dimension, and the only way out was a rematch against a boss you already fought 3 times prior. And then you still had to actually kill the Nightmare guy to move on, what the fuck, but no, the second and third encounter against the Griffin, it's straight up unfair how he decks you with lasers from off screen and there's no fucking way you can anticipate it. I died a couple of times with this dude alone, piece of shit. I want to see him get rocked again. Dumbass. has. What doesn't help is this game's lack of dodging mechanics. You can do this dodge roll and it works just fine, but you can only use it when you got your guns out and when you're locked onto an enemy, which isn't always obvious because there's no lock-on cursor in this game. You can't do the dodge roll with the sword out, and I don't understand that. Why can't I use it whenever I want? I also don't understand why certain upgrades like the double jump are locked to certain weapons and not just generic movement upgrades for Dante. So every time I want to get to exploring, I gotta take a bit of time to pause the game, switch to the Alistair, and watch the FMV of me equipping the weapon if he even has one, and then unpause the game and carry on. It's not snappy, this is my point. Your only other means of avoiding attacks is your basic jump, and your basic jump is the pits. Oh, you get plenty of vertical height, and if you fire your guns in the air, you can remain afloat long enough to score some extra hits and remain out of harm's way. If you press against the wall, you can even kick off of it and gain some extra distance that way. But you only get a bee's dick worth of horizontal distance with this jump. It's so bad that when you get to larger gaps when platforming, the game will automatically have Dante jump the required amount of distance to make the gap. On one hand, I'm grateful for the automation. On the other hand, this wouldn't be needed if the jump was actually good. Not even the double jump you can get later does much in making it better. This jump is only good for vertical ascension. Against enemies, it's not the best, and I understand that you're given some invulnerability on the first few frames of the jump, but the thing is, it just doesn't feel good to use, and I feel that's an important distinction. Ooh, when you're required to platform in the castle with this jump, it's not good. But fortunately, you don't have to do much of this, and with good positioning, there's some obstacles you can even ignore. But when you have to deal with it, man. That said, I didn't mind the exploration element of this game. In fact, I found it enjoyable. There's a lot of architecture that you can just jump on, and the game states that if you do the unusual, you'll be rewarded for it. Basically, jump on everything and you might be rewarded for it. And well, you know me, I enjoy when my curiosity is satiated, so jump on everything I did. You can find red orbs, blue fragments that permanently increase your health when you find 4 of them, a couple of one-off items like temporary invincibility, items to recharge your devil trigger gauge, or a holy water hand grenade acting as a screen nuke. And you know what, now that I think about it, this is pretty much a 3D Castlevania game, isn't it? I wonder how I'll feel about Lament of Innocence or Curse of Darkness after playing this game. Oh, that's a video for another time. You gotta scour every area for items needed to progress, like keys and other magical artifacts. And there's even a couple of puzzles, though. They're nothing to worry about. In fact, some I didn't like at all. I thought they flew in the face of what was supposed to be a free-flowing action title, like the section where you have to protect this life from enemies, otherwise you can't get out of this perpetual loop in the forest. Now, I don't mind going in circles and grinding enemies for more red orbs, but I'm also like, geez, I just want to get a fucking move on, you know? This felt like a leftover from the game's original intention of being a Resident Evil game. This game attempts to be something like a Metroidvania regarding progression, but it felt a little disjointed to me. You're in this castle for most of the game, and you're required to backtrack a lot with the right items to get to the next area. And even though you have a map that you can access anytime and it marks important locales as clear as day, I still found myself getting disoriented, and to mention again, the damn camera angles didn't help much. Hell, with the couple of times you had to go underwater, I really got disoriented. It's in first person view, the screen's blurry as shit, and until you get the harpoon gun, which I think you can just miss out on if you're not careful enough, you can't even defend yourself. The game didn't need these, I thought, and considering the brief runtime, it just felt like an intrusive gimmick that ruined the flow of the area. The game is broken up into missions, some of them being as short as 1 to 2 minutes. I gotta wonder what the point of some of these were, really, if they're gonna be that short. And because gameplay was completely halted by these constant result screens, I found it easier for me to lose track of where I was and how I could get back to where I needed to go. Some missions require that you get to a previous destination in a short amount of time before its mission failed, if not straight up death, and they like to throw a bunch of goons and other obstacles at you while you're doing so. If this game wasn't on the shorter end already, this could have been very problematic. There's also a handful of these secret missions that are only available when you backtrack to certain rooms during specific missions, and it's one of those things that you just have to know about. I don't remember the game directly telling me that these are even a thing. I discovered the ones I did by complete accident, and after the fact I looked up how to get to the other ones and I was like, fuck, I wasn't finding that one without a guide. Still, take the time to complete them when you find them. You get blue orbs for your health when you finish them, and a larger health bar means you can afford to eat shit later down the road or when you do a new game plus on a higher difficulty, something I think the game encourages you to do with everything carrying over to a new save file. But one playthrough was enough for me. I enjoyed the game enough, but not enough to consider going back to immediately, or hell, even on my own time. The game's short length and sufficient variety in what you do kept things from getting repetitive and stale, but the combat, from a casual level anyway, didn't quite hit the mark for me. I was indifferent throughout. The swordplay was fine, the guns were fine, double trigger was fine, but that's it, you know, it's just fine. Although I am aware of the many advanced techniques you can pull off with enough practice and dedication, seriously look it up on YouTube. I think that only matters to those who already love the game and are willing to put up with the antiquated design to get more out of it. I think my time is better spent seeing if future games just do it better, and I got a good feeling that's the case. Although, maybe I shouldn't speak too soon, but obviously the next game we're looking at is Devil May Cry 2 for the PS2, and I never played this game myself, but when you're surrounded by a bunch of DMC fans, you hear things. Almost unanimously agreed upon things. That said, I'm still trying to go into this entry as blind as possible to see what I ultimately think of it. So I will catch you guys next time with my review of Devil May Cry 2. Probably gonna be switching to the HD re-release for this one. For some fucking reason or another, this game is 2 discs, and is this game like fucking huge? I don't know. Well, anyway, more patron shoutouts. All right, so some more shoutouts to some $10 and above patrons. Apologies again if I do get your name wrong. Anyway, to where we left off. Let me see here. Blue Daniel 116, Scott Shambom, Patrick Delaney, Matthew TSP, Nicholas Shallis, X, just one X there, Red Luigi 64, About 4, Ian MacPhail, Mox, Kingdom Ace, Sky, Wolfgang 292, Lurker 1316, Albask, Avatar Aiden, Neronium, Croco Dude, Judah, Lan M, Some Person, Yin Seru, Seru, okay, probably like the dragon or the snake, Firebolt SSB, Christian Ramirez, STL, The Wild Mubar, Alfredo Guerra, Archer.xyz, Arbrax, Remo Lemlem, Bleh, Omega Jared X, Crashham's Quote, Arlo Rodriguez, The Archest of Archers, Hypersketch, Ego Dehai, Trey Young, Kim Yuhian, Trashly.bin, Ian Mulchler, Stiggy Stalls, or Stiggy Stalled, I'm not sure, Mike W, Robizi _LMP, Richard Kamiski or Kamiski, I'm not sure, Harrison, Calla Wilson, Braden Marsh, Flash the Monkey, John Arfio, Tohlet, I don't know, Analog Scoliosis, Olaf Person, Rutgerman 95, Chuniflo, it was a Chuniflo, Ian Shadowbolt 64, I Omar SP, Bisco, Squangle Productions, David Ivester, Hayden W, Shabzeb Mangi, Aaron B, and finally for today, Mr. Mr. CNES. Say Mr. and I pronounced the dot anyway, you fucking idiot. Wow. As always, thank you all for watching. Thank you to all of my patron supports. Thank you all for my subscribers on this channel as well. I do appreciate your time and company, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care, folks.